ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्ति। समस्तजनकल्याणि निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम्। ॐ श्रीचिन्मय सद्गुरवे नमः। हरि ओम। For last two sessions, pardon me, we forgot to pay the respect to Patanjali Muni. योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पातञ्जलि प्राञ्जलिर्नतोऽस्मि। Hari Om. We are trying to decipher one sutra of Patanjali, which is one of the most difficult sutras to intellectually comprehend. Because Patanjali Maharaj is talking about the experience, while we are trying to have intellectual grappling of that experience which he has narrated after the experience. When you go from gross to subtle, the ability of mind to comprehend the reality becomes extremely difficult. More subtler the subject, you need more subtler and penetrating intellect. The buddhi, the dhi, has to be sharp enough. It has to evolve from a rudimentary buddhi, which can understand the world in crudest or grossest form. Now it has to evolve itself from that towards what is called as medha or pratibha, and then slowly towards the rutambara. That's the ultimate bastion of buddhi. After that, even the buddhi has to dissolve to understand further subtler something than that, because that which need to be comprehended is transcending the buddhi. In short, sharper, subtler the buddhi, it becomes easier to understand Patanjali Yoga Shastra or Vedas or Upanishads. However, we are trying to see it from a grosser side, so it might prove to be difficult, and naturally so. We have in front of us Vitarka Vichara Ananda Asmita Anugama Sampradnya. Only 5 words are there. That is what we are trying to comprehend. What is that precisely Patanjali Maharaj is trying to say? In our last session, we saw that it is not expressly said that these are the stages of Samadhi, but the Bhashyakaras and everybody, including Swami Vivekananda, who interpreted all this, Shivananda, Krishnananda, everybody has commented on this as stages of Samadhi only. So let us call these as stages of Samadhi. These are nothing else but the stages of journey that we take when we completely isolate ourselves from the Bahya Srushti Samparka. I am no more connected with the world. I have closed my indriyas, and closed not physically. For that matter, you can't close your ears. There is no facility to close the ears. We may close the eyes. But internally, I have closed all the 5 indriyas. Once the indriyas are closed, then me and my antar vishwa, internal world, these are the only 2 things existing. Now I'm not interested in the parrot or the bird chirping or the vehicle passing on the road or somebody sitting there and somebody is listening to some music. Nothing. Everything is cut off from outside. No external influence is there to induce any kind of reaction from me or my mind. Now my mind is entirely trying to look into the Antarvishwa. However, the Antarvishwa itself is also nothing else but the reflection of what I have seen earlier in the Bahya Vishwa. That which has been experienced, which leaves an impression called samskara, is right there inside the mind. So the mind will start pulling out those things in front of me. So I need not have to really open my eyes to see a woman, because she's residing inside my buddhi. A delicacy that I want to eat, it need not be there around me, but I can create it through the thought, through the vritti of mind. But Patanjali Maharaj says the one who has subdued the vrittis, for him he is talking about this. So what it means is, externally as well as internally, the world is switched off. Switching off of external and internal world is called Vairagya Purna Avastha. There are many ways we can define Vairagya. Giving up everything is the grossest definition of Vairagya. Giving up everything. You don't need anything. The other side of the same definition is having no desire is Vairagya. But the process-wise, what happens in Vairagya is, mind is not attuned to any thought. That is a far better definition through yoga. The mind is neither internalized nor externalized with the help of any desire whatsoever, which would mean no changes happening on the lake of chitta, so no vritti. So vritti virahita vritti nirodha avastha. Now the question is, if it is vritti nirodha avastha, then you have already reached, because yoga is chitta vritti nirodha. No. The difference here is, the vrittis are still there, but they are not towards the object outside or the memories inside. The vritti is towards probing the mind or probing the things. You have a knife and you are cutting things with the knife, so naturally you will focus on what you are cutting. Now imagine you are cutting a fruit with the knife. The knife is called buddhi, fruit is called vishaya. So if the knife is cutting the fruit, then you are focusing on the vishaya as well as the cutting, the way it happens. But you are not focusing on the knife, it is presumed. Similarly, when the mind engages into different subjects, you presume the mind, so you focus on the subject more. The situation that Patanjali Maharaj is talking is, there are no more subjects. So what has happened? The apple is gone, the fruit is gone. So where are you focusing now? You are focusing on the knife. The knife itself is an object. Mana is itself an object. It's a jada. It's not a chetan. So it is an object. But what you're doing is, you're trying to see how the knife is. Where is the sharpness of the knife? How is the knife? So what has happened? Instrument through which you are supposed to comprehend the world, you are trying to comprehend the instrument itself. I pray and hope that I'm making it clear. So in dhyana, what I'm doing is, I'm trying to use this knife in the beginning with only one fruit. Otherwise, I have umpteen number of vishayas in front of me. I take only one vishaya, one fruit for the knife to cut, one vishaya for the mind to think. I start my journey from there. And then we saw, to recapitulate of the last session, one of the most startling statement was, desire is the abnormal function of mind. This is what we saw last time. Desire. Because desire presupposes me as separate from what I'm desiring, which is our daily experience. Every day we experience that I am different and I desire. I desire happiness. I desire my children should be fine. I desire I should get good money. I desire I should get good food. This desire itself presupposes that I consider myself different than the object of this desire. This duality of experiencer and the experience is grained in my mind, ingrained. That is how I'm living. My entire living is like that only. So there is a naturality to it. There is a sahajavastha to it. But Patanjali Yoga Shastra says desire itself is an abnormality of the mind. It is an abnormal function of mind. Now that abnormality is taken into account, and then to remove this abnormality, to remove this fallacy that you and the object are different, there are different objects in the world and I am so and so, I am different in this world from the other objects. To remove this anomaly is Yoga Shastra. How do I work on this, removing this anomaly? That is where the Patanjali Maharaj has come. He has put some preconditions, and these preconditions are you will need two things, Abhyasa and Vairagya. Abhyasa means be prepared for a very prolonged period of repetitive study. Abhyasa. How much is the Dirghakala or the prolonged study? Maybe few months, years, births, few births. It all depends on the progress that we make. And Vairagya. Vairagya is what? To study the object, you need to be away from the object. By getting immersed into the world, you can't study the world. Not possible, sir. If you want to study the flowing water of a river, you have to be on the bank. You can't be inside the water. You will not come to know the length and the breadth and everything of the water of the running river. This attempt of coming to the bank so that you can observe the river is Vairagya. Getting extricated from the world of subjects and objects, emotions and feelers. This body and mind, the BM part of the BMI chart, is extricating yourself, becoming less and less of perceiver of object, becoming less and less feeler of emotions. That is how you extinguish B and M. What about I? When B and M is extinguished, because I, the intelligent thinker, or the thoughts, are proportionate to how much B and M are there in this world. More the body in this world, more for the I to think. When you extricate yourself from the world, when you reduce your B and M, body and mind, that means the interaction with the objects in the world, naturally, the intelligence, buddhi, has less to think of the objects, but it will still think. Think of what? Now that you are out of one preoccupation in the hand of dealing with the objects of the world, naturally the intelligence now shall start thinking about viveka, thinking about your nature. Kastvam, kaha, kut ayataha. Acharya asked this question in Bhaja Govindam. Who are you? From where did you come? Whence did you come? You will start thinking on that. This thinking, because there is no object-wise thinking, this thinking is about the sthiti. You want to know. You may term this in the beginning as curiosity, jidnyasu. Bhagavad Gita calls such a person as jidnyasu. And inquiry about yourself is nothing else but inquiry about God. Why? Because you are God. I'm convinced I am not God. And when I inquire about who I am, I'm actually inquiring about who God is. This process of inquiry is what precisely Patanjali Maharaj is talking. The one who has achieved the Purna Vairagyam or Apara Vairagya. We saw that. Yatamana Vyatireka Ekagra and the last stage of Apara Vairagya. Once we have those 4 stages of Apara Vairagya crossed, you are entitled and eligible for the stage that we are describing now, in which the person who is so qualified through Vivek and Vairagya, when he sits for meditation, because he is expert in cutting off all the relations around him in this world, he takes one object in front of him and calls the object by any name of his choice. We are going to come to that sutra a little later in Sadhana Path, where Patanjali Maharaj himself says the choice is yours. In the Yoga Shastra, this is the only choice we have. Rest everything, there is no choice. I hope I'm making it clear. The object of meditation is the choice of meditator. Now, suppose somebody says that I want to have an object which is Shaligram and I want to meditate on it as Vishnu. Allowed. No, I want to take Gurudeva's photograph and meditate on him as Gurudeva. Allowed. I don't want to have an object in front of me. I want to have a void in front of me. Allowed. I don't know what I want to have in front of me, but I just want to close my eyes and meditate on whatever comes in front of me. Allowed. But generally, because of the past samskara, the object of meditation, if it is something which you revere, Shraddha Purvak, then the object stays in front of your mind for a longer time, and that is why it is preferred, not a must, preferred that you must or you should rather look for an object like Ishta Devata. Ishta Devata, you have enormous respect for Devata. That particular Devata, I like Rama, Bhagavan Ramachandra. Allowed. Then don't take Krishna. No, I like Krishna, but not the one regular one. I like Balakrishna. Balakrishna. Object of meditation is the choice of meditator, and it is the only choice in Yoga Shastra. Rest everything is Adesha, Niyam, rule. You have to go by rule. Why? Because the journey happens as per the rule only. There are no deviations there. Each meditator may have different experiences, purely individual to himself. That is fine. But the process that he will go through, the method that he will go through is same. Then in the last session, we saw that if this object of meditation is focused with complete concentration on that object, what is complete concentration on the object? Absolute no inkling of thought or concentration on any other object. You and the object. You and the object of meditation. The object of meditation is called pratika. Pratik, representative. Pratika is a representative. So you, the dhyata, meditator, dhyata, and pratika, which is dheya. Dhyata and dheya, meditator and the object, dhyata and the pratika, whatever you have taken, and that also is in the mind you are taking that. Because we are able to visualize what is in gross form in the mind's screen. So you're able to do that. Maybe you can add to the strength of the meditation in the beginning to start with by taking an actual object in front of you and sit in a proper way, sit in the place which is your Deva Ghara, the place where Deva Graha is there. You can sit in the Deva Graha. Why? These are all things which makes you, it is like if you wear an uniform, you feel better when you're going to the school. Why? You get a feeling of belongingness. But those are all extra paraphernalias. May have, may not have. Having it definitely helps. If you don't have it, then there's no admission, no, nothing of that kind. Now that you have started such an object-oriented meditation, which is the grossest meditation or the first stage of meditation, you have started your journey towards the first word of this mantra, which is Vitarka. Now the question is, what is Vitarka? We saw Vitarka, Swami Vivekananda calls Vitarka as questioning. Now questioning means, do you question the object in meditation? Who are you? Who are you? No, it is not that. The very fact that you are concentrating on the object, you're actually, what you're doing is you're dissecting the nature of the object. Now you may tell me that what is there in nature of the object? It is a stone and I'm calling it as a Vishnu. I already know that. What is the inquiry? That is the fallacy. Every object has, we saw in the last session, every object has a name, naam, and a roop. In the meditation, you go beyond that. Now you no more call that stone as Shaligram. That is a name. You no more look at it as a small circular thing. No, that is a roop. That anyway you know when you're awake. Why meditate for that? Presuming that you know that, you take those two sheets away. Now when you take out a naam and a roop, let us say our own Pradeep ji. I know him as Pradeep ji and I know him as roop also. Beyond that I have never gone. Why? My gross mind tells me, this is Pradeep ji, what is more in it? He is eating like me, he eats like me, he sleeps like me. No, these are general external characteristics for the transactional world, Vyavharika Vishwa. Meditation is going beyond the transactional things. Nama Rupa Bhedana. Transcend the Nama Rupa. How do I do that? Because I take the stone in front of me and I already remember the stone and Vishnu maximum. And the moment I say Vishnu, I immediately feel Chaturbhuja with a Sudarshana and what, etc., the mace and the. Beyond that, the imagination doesn't go. Why? The mind has never tried that. Why? I have never focused. I have always been casual about God. I've been doing Deva Puja since my childhood. But beyond the fact that in the corner in the brass form is Ganapati and this one is a Krishna, I just clean them and wash them and put them back. That is my Deva Puja. I have never ever even gone little artificially to put my feelings into that Murti. That, this is a Balakrishna like a small baby. Even that much I have not done. Now the situation is you're after the meditation. That is why pre-meditation qualification, which the Patanjali described as Abhyasa and Vairagya, if that has happened and the Vairagya has come, then only this meditation is further possible. Otherwise, it is like a warrior going on the war without any implement in the hand. He will be killed instantly. Charitra Shuddhata, Chitta Shuddhata, the first stage. Ekagrata Prayatna, second stage. And when the concentration starts excelling, then the meditation starts moving the way now it is going to be described. And we saw last session that the object of meditation and the subject of meditation, that is Dhyata, meditator, and the object of meditation, Dheya, when they meditate very deeply, after removing the Nam and the Roop and start concentrating and focusing into the object, it is called consciousness in me trying to go and shake hands with the consciousness in the object. Now let us say that there is a object like that we say, this is a pain, an object. Now I know that there is a Nama and a Rupa for this. This is called pain, this is white in color, these are Nama Rupa. So my consciousness has already touched this consciousness. That is how I recognize this as a pain. That is called Pramata Chaitanya and Prameya Chaitanya. We'll see that later. There is a method called how knowledge happens. Jnana Paddhati. This is Pramata. This is Prameya. And Prama, the Buddhi, goes there. And through Pramana, I come to know. So when I come to know means my consciousness recognize consciousness in this. This is called recognition. That is how I come to know, oh, this is pain. How do I come to know this is pain? Because this has consciousness in it. For that matter, everything in the world has to have a consciousness in it. It has. Sabhi thaur jamaat hamari, sabhi thaur par mela. I am everywhere. Hum guru gurunath re, nanak naam hamara re. Nanak naam hamara, harghat dam hamara. Harghat dam means my consciousness is everywhere. So consciousness is in pain, consciousness is in me. With the help of my eyes, the consciousness moves out of my eyes, reaches, goes here, becomes one with the consciousness here, and instantly I realize, oh, this is pain. Now what has happened is, since I have recognized this consciousness earlier as pain, my memory comes in my help saying that this is pain, because this is a reignition of the memory of seeing the pain for the first time. But that is for Nama Rupa, to know the name. Now the question is, if this has consciousness, and my consciousness has recognized the consciousness in this as pain, is it a complete recognition of consciousness or a partial recognition of consciousness? This is a partial recognition of consciousness. And our entire transactional world is by partial recognition of consciousness. Partial meaning thereby only going and touching the consciousness to the extent of knowing what the object is and what's its function. Enough, nothing more than that. Now, when I see this, do I see Artha Tattva into that Artha, Jala, Vayu? No, I don't see. This is Panchamahabhuta, right? And this is also Panchamahabhuta. But when I am seeing this Panchamahabhuta, do I see Panchamahabhuta in this? No. I say this is plastic. But what is plastic? Panchamahabhuta. But I can't see Panchamahabhuta. I see this as a plastic. What it means is, my consciousness hasn't bared open, split open, analyzed this object completely to the final extent. Meditation does that. To know the consciousness or the way this object is, my consciousness slowly has to transcend into the object. As my consciousness will transcend into the object, my own consciousness will form a continuous flow with the object, Taila Dharavat, like a stream of continuous oil. My consciousness will keep pouring into the object of consciousness of the object. When the consciousness gets more and more transferred, I will come to know more and more about the object. So far, only a cursory glance told me. My consciousness just glanced at it and I came to know this is pain. Now I'm talking beyond that. This is called going beyond the Nama and Rupa. Now when my consciousness streams into the object, slowly the object start getting the complete consciousness, because whatever consciousness I have and whatever consciousness this has, when they completely merge with each other, it is as good as subject is residing in the object. When subject resides into the object through transference, which is called subject-object transference, this is called a samadhi. Why samadhi? Because now there is no object and there is no subject. Why? The whole subject has gone into the object. When subject goes into the object, how can there be two things? When there are no two things, I will not perceive this object. I will be the object. I hope things are clear. Subject-object transference. This object, in the beginning, it was this an object, this a subject, and this was an object. As meditation progressed, the subject entered into the object. That means transference of consciousness is complete into the object. And when this happens, this object itself becomes the subject. Why? Because I'm inside this. So I'm one subject is here, one Dr. Jadhav is here, one Dr. Jadhav entered into the pins. So there are two Dr. Jadhavs. Can there be two Dr. Jadhavs? Two subjects? No. That means this will become one, merging. This is the art of merging. question now is, this object is pain, but by looking at pain, how will we come to know about the world? It's all right that I this becomes me, so I'll come to know what is pain, and 100% all the knowledge about the pain I will get because my consciousness has merged into it. But what has it achieved? I am not interested in knowing how the pain, what are the intricate of things of pain. That is not my object. The beauty lies here. Every object in the world, every object in the world is made up of what? Panchamahabhut. So when you want to know or when you enter into the object, leaving the Nam and the Rupa, you're basically entering into Panchamahabhuta. Now the Prithvi Tattva, Jala, Agni, Vayu, Akasha, which is there in this, when my consciousness goes inside, it feels and perceives those five tattva as my own. And when you recognize these five tattva into this, it is not the recognition of the pain that you are doing, it is the recognition of Panchamahabhuta. So if I know Vayu in this, I know the entire Vayu. The object made up of Panchamahabhuta. So by knowing the object intimately, by becoming one with it, you come to know the entire Panchamahabhuta. And that means what is entire Panchamahabhuta? The universe. The physical manifested, because this is physical. I'm still not talking about the subtle part. I'm talking of physical part. All the objects in the world we will come to know by knowing one object. Because all objects, irrespective of their Nam and Rupa, they are same. They are Panchamahabhuta. I hope this is clear. The very reason why a meditator takes an object and meditates on an object is to know intimately an object through the power of concentration from a pure mind by transferring the consciousness of his into the object and becoming one with the objects by subject-object transference, and the process is called Samadhi. And this process goes through stages, of which the first stage is called Vitarka Samadhi. Now, Vitarka is questioning. So what is happening actually is you're trying to know the Panchamahabhuta. This is as good as questioning the object that who are the Panchamahabhutas in you. That is why the word Vitarka. Vitarka is questioning, reasoning, questioning. You are trying to reason out the real nature of the object. And when I say real nature, not the one which is seen externally. We saw last time, a real nature of an object is called suchness, isness, tathatha, thatness. We saw that Buddhist word tathatha also. That's why the Buddhist realized person is called tathagataha. Tathagataha, the one who knows the tathatha, suchness of everything. Realized soul. I hope to this extent we are clear. Meditation is a process of transferring the consciousness from the subject to the object of meditation. In order to transfer the consciousness residing in the subject to the consciousness residing in the object and merging with the consciousness of the object, so that object no more remains an object but becomes a subject. That is called as complete union with the subject. And what is the phalaprapti, phalam? What is the result of this? You come to know in entirety everything about the object. And the object being same everywhere, knowing one object is knowing the universe. So when you are actually meditating on an object, most of the discussion use the word, they don't say you are meditating on a murti, they say you are meditating on the universe. Now, initially we feel little aghast. How can you meditate on the universe which is so vast? You don't have to meditate on the universe. Meditating on object itself is meditating on universe. Why? Getting deep into the object is automatically expanding and getting into the universe at all, at stretch. So now we know that consciousness from the subject goes towards the object. When the consciousness goes from subject to the object, the moment the consciousness of two, subject and object, meet each other, there comes a stage whose byproduct is ananda. So when I see the pain, this will give me happiness. If I'm desiring for this pain, and now that it is there with me, I'm not interested. It's there, and I don't have much value for the pain. It's barely 3 dirhams I can throw it. There's no value. But imagine I'm desperate for the pain, and I got the pain. I feel, oh, I'm so happy that I got the pain. What is happy? What is there to become happy about the pain? What has happened is the consciousness in me and the consciousness in this pain fulfills the desire. Fulfilling desire is meeting of consciousness. The only problem is this meeting of consciousness is only for a moment. So I get a happiness of only a moment. Now remove this particular pain and let's say there is a masala dosa in front of me. I am hungry. Hunger means desire for food. So I am hungry, desire for food is there, and the food comes, and I take the first bite and put it in my mouth. What happened? The desire got fulfilled. That is the point when consciousness meets, and you feel happy. But the desire is gone, the consciousness meeting is gone. Second dosa will not be as good, or maybe I'm not interested at all. So we do get in transactional world fleeting sort of happiness, moment to moment, because of meeting of consciousness. If this is a surface contact of consciousness that gives me so much of happiness, imagine when the consciousness merges with another consciousness, how much happy one would be feeling. And that is why those who are able to get into meditation and become successful in transferring the consciousness into the object, they start enjoying a happiness of a different kind. That is why even if it is 2 hours, 3 hours, the body is aching, they want to go in meditation. When Ramakrishna Paramahamsa passed away, and at Varahanagar, when all the young monk bachelors, the brahmacharis all came together, including Swami Vivekananda, all the brahmacharis were constantly getting into meditation to an extent that the senior monk, Ramakrishnananda Maharaj, Shashi Maharaj is known, who was known as, he had to go and literally pull people saying that it's a time for bath. You got up at 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock and you're in meditation till 12 o'clock. There is something else to be done. Take your bath, take your food. They did not even like the food. They did not like bath. They want to go to meditation. Why? The process of transference of consciousness from the subject to the object is also associated with enormous amount of peace and happiness. Now that we have studied, or we have come to the point of knowing what is called as transference, we are now fit to understand this particular sutra. Mind well, we are yet to start with the sutra. This is all Purva Pitika. We are trying to create the background for understanding that sutra. Vitarka Vichar Ananda Asmita Anugama Sampradnyata. This is what we are trying to understand. Now that we have understood that what is meditation in the grossest level, and this is the grossest meditation that I'm talking, because we are going to see what are the higher levels of meditation. But to understand that, the gross level needs to be understood properly. And I'm presuming that we have understood it. Now to know stages next to Vitarka. Vitarka we saw. Vitarka means questioning, reasoning, That means whenever an object of meditation is taken in front, you try to see the complete intricacies of the object, getting into the details of the object through the penetrating intellect, concentrating on that object. That is called vitarka samadhi. Vitarka means you are trying to basically know the nature of that object by transferring your consciousness. To know what is vichara, ananda and asmita, further stages. And mind well, Patanjali Maharaj is still talking about Sampradnyat Samadhi. Asampradnyat Samadhi is beyond that. So to understand that, now it has become imperative for us to know Sankhya Tattva Jnana. When we say Sankhya Tattva Jnana, we will discuss that because that has relationship with the Dhyanam that we are going to talk. So far we have talked only about process of meditation. Meenakshi ji have been asking about what are the tattvas of Sankhyas. Now we will see that and we will see its relevance. I hope Gurudev helps me in explaining this properly because this is a very, very basic and fundamental concept of Sankhya Tattva Jnana. Let us all listen carefully. When nothing in this world is existing, the creation has not happened. When creation has not happened, what is there? There is absolute consciousness, nothing else. Sat, Chit, Anand, these are the criteria given by us to that state. But that which is absolute consciousness, which is called Parabrahma, is called Purusha in Sankhya Prakriti. A stage when nothing is existing, only Purusha is existing. Now the question is, no differentiation has happened. There are no individuals, there are no objects, there are no subjects. The universe is not formed. There is no day, there is no night, there is no time, there is no space, nothing. Very difficult to imagine, I know. We cannot think of anything without space. Without time and space, we can't think. That one pure soul, Einstein, he could think of space and transcending the space and transcending the time. It's very difficult. Our Rishis could do that because of the Rutambara Buddhi they had, because they themselves transcended the space and time. So for them to think transcending space-time was not difficult. But for a normal mortal individual like us, thinking beyond space is extremely difficult. Unfortunately or fortunately, we do that in Samadhi. We are supposed to do that. But we are now imagining a state that no space, no time, no universe, nothing. Pure Parabrahman or Purusha. So that is the first tattva of Sankhya. The primordial, everlasting, non-changing, inert, Shuddha, Buddha, Shukra, that which doesn't move, that which is only one, Ekameva Dvitiya, that is Parabrahma or Purusha. So that is the first tattva. Then, for some reason not comprehended, which cannot be comprehended by the brain, the Purusha decided to project its potential for objective manifestation. We all are people who understand English. Potential for objective manifestation. I'm not talking of object manifestation. Listen carefully. Potential for objective manifestation. That is called Shakti. If you take Shiva Samhita, the same philosophy is everywhere. But in Shaiva Siddhanta, that Parabrahman is called Shiva. And this potential for objective manifestation is called Shakti. It is inseparable part of Purusha only. But Purusha, when it has potential for objective manifestation, it is called Prakriti. See, we have in our mind a feeling that Prakriti must be some substance. It is not a substance. It is not substantial. Prakruti is mode of operation. Prakruti is mode of operation. The potential, the capacity, the inbuilt capacity, the power within the Purusha to potentially manifest into an object is called Prakruti. We saw that it is not a subject or it is not an object, it is a mode of operation, it is potentiality to express. This potentiality is called Prakruti. Moment the potentiality becomes separate from the Purusha, potentiality was anyway within the Purusha. When he was only one and neutral, it was not there. But when it decided to manifest, the potentiality which comes out is called Prakruti. Then, for some mysterious reason, that Purusha, the consciousness, shades its reflection on the Prakriti. That consciousness which has come into the Prakriti is called cosmic consciousness. Why it is called cosmic consciousness? Because cosmos is going to be formed. Let's make it further clear. When Purusha alone is existing, nothing is happening. Even to say that nothing and happening, these words also have no relevance. Why? There is only one singular Ekameva Advitiya Shuddha Sat Chit Ananda Rupa Parabrahma or Purusha. That is the first stage. When Ekoham Bahusyam or whatever Sankalpa that has been described, the potentiality or the Shakti part of the same Purusha, when it potentiates, it becomes Prakruti. And when that potentiate, let us say, take an analogy. There is a huge glacier, that is Purusha. Some part of the glacier, which is part of the glacier, decides to liquefy. This ability to liquefy is Prakruti. Now that ability has started to manifest, the water will come out of the Ganga, will come out from that Himanaga glacier. Glacier is Purusha, the Ganga is Prakruti, and moment that potentiality or the Prakruti is coming, the reflection of Himanaga is seen in that water of Ganga. That is called cosmic consciousness, which is in Sankhya called Mahat Tattva. Other name for Mahat Tattva is Buddhi. So now this is third Tattva. Purusha, Prakruti, potentiality to manifest, reflection in Prakruti, Buddhi or Mahat Tattva. First three Tattvas of Sankhya. The reason why I am telling all this is because those 5 words of the mantra can only be understood when we understand this particular cosmogony of Sankhya Tattva Jnana. Because those samadhis are nothing else but going back to this Himanaga, to this glacier. This process of going back is what is described in that mantra. That is why we must know process of coming down. And what I'm talking is process of coming down of the consciousness. There are 24 tattvas in Sankhya. So we are saying one by one. Purusha, Prakriti, reflection of Purusha into Prakriti called cosmic consciousness or Mahat Tattva or Buddhi. Now for God's sake, there are some words, don't confuse them with the words that we know. When I say this Buddhi, don't try to compare with this Buddhi. Why? Because this Buddhi is part and parcel of the characters of this Buddhi are part and parcel, or they look like that Buddhi. That is called as Mahat Tattva, means Buddhi of cosmos. And when we say Buddhi means what? Ability to know. Where was this Buddhi earlier? Mahat Tattva earlier? Earlier there was nothing to know. Only one Purusha was there. What is there to know? Because to know is not Purusha. To know, only when the differentiation starts, to know comes. I know the handkerchief because handkerchief is two. This and me, they are different. But when this becomes one, I cannot know handkerchief. Similarly, knowing as a process is possible only when differentiation starts. That is why Purusha gave rise to potentiality to manifest called Prakriti, and then comes immediately Mahat Tattva. That means the Sufi tells so much of difficult philosophy in very few simple words. मैंने बनाया, मैं उसी घर में बैठा. मैंने घर बनाया प्रकृति, मैं उसी घर में बैठा महत तत्व. पहले मैं कौन था? पहले मैं ला मका था. देयर वाज नो हाउस फॉर मी. अब मैं हूं मकीन वाला, अब मैं हूं मकान वाला. I was without the house, now I have the house, but I have entered in the house. Anupravishyati, it is called. Utpatti, Sthiti, Laya, Pravesha, Anushasana. These are 5 functions of Lord called Prabhu. The word Prabhu entails these 5 functions. Utpatti, Sthiti, Laya, Pravesha. This Pravesha is consciousness entering into the Buddhi. So these are 3 tattvas. Why this is important? The second tattva, Prakriti, we called it as a potentiality to manifest. Potentiality because when I call myself a man, do you know the other side of this statement? When I call myself a man, that means I already agree that there is a possibility of I becoming a woman. Possibility. I am not, but possibility. Why? Because one identification as man came to me, that means there is a possibility of identification of not man, that is woman. This is called potentiality. So Prakriti is Bahu Prasava. Why? All ifs and buts she can do. She can create A, the B will be created. That means B is so far not created, but possibility is there. This is called potentiality. Ability to transform into whatever one desires. That is Prakriti's function. I want to go a little slow on these tattvas of Sankhya because otherwise we cannot understand what is Savichar, Nirvichar, Asmita, Ananda and Asmita Samadhi. And we need to understand Samadhi very well because we cannot understand the sadhana unless we understand Samadhi properly. So we are trying to keep bare open as much as possible the skeleton of Samadhi by going steadily. We first saw in the last session and today also about how the meditation happens through an object, why an object, what happens to the consciousness transference, that we saw. Now we are started with the Sankhya Tattva Jnana and we have so far seen only 3 tattvas, Purusha, Prakriti and Mahat Tattva or Buddhi. 3 tattvas we have seen. Not that we were knowing these tattvas earlier, but our ideas about Prakriti was like there is a Purusha, then he gives an egg called Prakriti. It's not like that. We have to stretch our imagination. Full of consciousness, nothing else existing in the world, the Purusha decides to throw open the potentiality of manifestation. It was already in dormant condition with Purusha, now it has become immanent. The very fact that I am going to manifest, potentiality to manifest Prakriti is formed. And moment that potentiality comes into existence, the consciousness reflects into it, which is called Buddhi or Mahat Tattva. Today we will stop here. We have seen only 3 tattvas. We will see rest of the tattvas next time. And then we will be geared up to understand this mantra of 5 words. Vitarka, Vichar, Anand, Asmita, Anugama Sampradnyataha. We will come to that. So these are for today. We shall be going tomorrow into the details of, the next Tuesday into the details of remaining tattvas of Sankhya so that we can move forward. Before we conclude, there was a doubt that was expressed. Some question was asked, and the question was, what is Sutra, what is Vartikam, and what is Bhashya? In Hindu scriptures, I'm not talking of novels and other things. In Hindu scriptures, the study of scripture is always followed by what is called Anubandha Chatushta. That means every scripture will be called a scripture if 4 conditions are completed. For example, Patanjali Yoga Shastra, you want to study. There has to be Anubandha of 4 types. Tatra Anubandho Namaha Adhikar Vishaya Sambandha Prayojana. Every scripture that you study, 4 things have to be very clear about it. Adhikara, who can read it? Now, if you go by Adhikara, we can't study Patanjali Yoga Shastra. Why? Sadhana Chatushta Sampannata is the Adhikar for Patanjali Yoga Shastra. Different thing we are studying, but this is called Adhikar. Vishaya. Vishaya is Mumukshata. Mokshata is the Vishaya. Sambandha, between me and the Yoga Shastra. What is the Sambandha? Prapya Prapakatva Sambandhya. I have to obtain some phalam by studying that particular thing. The phalam is the prayojana. Prayojana is to emancipate myself. Now, once we know that what is this particular Anubandha Chatushta, any grantha that is written, say Patanjali Yoga Sutra, the grantha can be classified as sutra. What is sutra? We saw in the beginning, first session. Alpaksharam asandigdham Saravat Vishwato Mukha Astobham Anavadyam Cha Sutram Sutravido Viduhu. Alpaksharam, smallest possible words should be used. Terseness, in English it is called terse. Absolute packed with meaning, but minimum words. Alpaksharam. Asandigdham, there should be no doubt. Saravat. Saravat means it should contain only the nichod. The final gist it should contain. It should not be elaborative. That is why Patanjali Yoga Shastra book you can carry between your pinching of your fingers. But so much of meaning is packed into it. Vishwato Mukham. Vishwato Mukham means you take this book here and give it to an American. It will still be applicable to him. Look at our Dharma Grantha. They may not be applicable to everybody. Some of them may not be applicable. This religion's book, they may not be applicable to that religion's book. But this is not that book. Sutra is Vishwato Mukham. Anybody can use it and it will be applicable across the board, across the time. In the first century, in the coming 1,000 centuries. Astobham, not superfluous. Either bhi likha hai, udhar bhi likha hai. What is the meaning? This will not happen in Patanjali Yoga Shastra. What is written is clear and crisp. Anavadyam. Anavadyam means faultless. No grammatical fault, no lakshanartha fault. Absolutely. That is why the one who interprets will never get confused. That is called sutra. When the sutra is commented upon, then rest of the things come. First is Vartikam. What is Vartika? Ukta Anukta Duruktanam Chinta Yatra Pravartate Tam Grantha Vartikam Prahu Vartikajna Manishinaha. Ukta Anukta Durukta. If Patanjali Maharaj, whatever he has said, Anukta, whatever he has not said, Durukta, whatever is not clearly stated, if somebody writes on these 3, it becomes Vartika. Vartik means whatever the original Granthakara has said, whatever he has not said, and whatever he has not clearly said, Anukta, Ukta, Durukta. All the 3, one who writes is called Vartikam. Then there is another writing on a Granth called Bhashyam. We all know Shankar Bhashya on Gita. We have all studied it. What is Bhashyam? Sutrartho varnayate yatra padaihi sutraanusar swapadani cha varnate bhashyam bhashyavido viduhu. The one who writes about the meaning of the sutra. So that is why in Shankar Bhashya Bhagavad Gita, Shankaracharya explains what is given by Bhagavad Gita. So he explains that pada, then adds his own pada. Swapadani cha varnate, that is called Bhashyam. So it is elaborative, but first give the meaning of what is said, then add your meaning and then explain it. Now that he has asked 3 questions, these 3 terminologies, there are other 3 also we must know. That is called Vritti. For example, on Sankhya Tattvajnan, there is a famous vritti called Mathara Vritti. Mathar Rishi wrote vritti on that. What is vritti? Vritti is a short gloss explaining the aphorisms, but not as elaborate as Bhashya. The vritti is short gloss explaining the aphorism, but not as elaborate as Bhashya. Then there is also called Tika or Vyakhyana. Tika means whenever an example is given, it is called Drishtanta. So explanation like Bhashya, but with example. In Shankar Bhashya, Bhagavad Gita, you will not find many examples. But Jnaneshwari, if you see, it is full with this Drishtanta. And then there is something called Deepika. Deepika means a lamp illuminating the original work. One of the difficult work is to add a light to the scripture that you're describing. That is why Jnaneshwari, everybody knows the original name of Jnaneshwari is Bhavartha Deepika. Bhavartha Deepika. Deepika means illuminating the Bhagavad Gita. So these are the 5 different terminologies that are used. Of course, Sutra Vartikam Bhashyam is already defined under that. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnam Udachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Dilipji,
Hari Om. Yeah, okay. I was waiting for a response from you. Hari Om to everyone. In fact, it's a meditation. It's not a small thing as I imagine it is going deeper and deeper and it's becoming tougher and tougher. Thank you, Hariji, Sanjayji, for explaining. We have just seen the steps and what will happen when we get into the house and when we learn the other 24 tattvas, numbers of the Sankhya. Now, I was just wondering so many thoughts came into mind when you were explaining this, how Gurudev was trying to absorb in one go all those things. When we have all the recording facilities, revival, and all kind of things. These simple things we take for to digest. Last recording, I viewed it twice last time's discourse. This at least thrice I have to see that to get into deeper into this. Now, what we have mentioned is all practical things when we were cutting some vegetables, our buddhi was tilting from looking at the knife or the vegetables. Now because of your explanation, now we can easily concentrate on things, and I think it will the same. Now, one simple question. Now, desire is the function of your what you call indriyas. Now, if you through meditation you can shut off your indriyas. This is what ultimate aim is. So when you are feeling hungry, that is a body reaction. It is not a indriyas or anything. That's a desire. When you are hungry, you feel like eating masala dosa, as you explained, or any other thing. When you are thirsty, you want to drink. That's a desire. But through meditation, you can curtail that one, and you can remain without hunger for 3-4 days like that.
Hari Om. the question about the bodily desires, such as hunger and thirst, are also felt only when you are aware that you are a body. In the state of meditation, because you are unaware that your body is existing, you are not even aware that there is something called thirst and hunger. That is why in the fourth or the fifth stage of samadhi, you have complete dissociation with body, and that is why it is written in the scriptures that maximum after 21 days, if such a person does not come down from samadhi, he will die. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa did not know that he had to eat, and he was in Nirvikalpa Samadhi for 6 months, and that is why after few days of his Samadhi, a sadhu came and who advised others that please force open his mouth and feed him some food, and that is how he was given some food, which sometimes he gulped, sometimes he did not gulp, sometimes it fell out of his mouth because he was not aware of his body. Hari Om.
Hari Om. One more question, Sanjay ji, if time permits. Okay, I will separately I will ask that. Let others carry on with that. Hari Om, please go ahead. I will chat with Sanjay ji subsequently.
Hari Om, Sanjay ji.
Hari.
Hari Om. So you had you mentioned that when we are focusing on an object during meditation, we come to know the Pancha Mahabhutas. So when we are focusing on the object, the Pancha Mahabhutas, the knowing is in gradations. Does it happen in gradation, or at one stage you come to know about all the Pancha Mahabhutas?
The process of knowing the object's intricate details is an individual experience to everybody. It can happen in bumps, and that is why whenever that happens, our own body of the meditator suddenly goes into what is called as a kind of a feeling of an electric shock. So that is why sometimes you have horripilation during samadhi, sometimes you will cry because you are into the exalted state of emotions. Sometimes it just happens that you get scared because your individuality is getting lost. The greatest scare on this earth is not death. The greatest scare on this earth is to lose your individuality. Now that happens during that process. So when you are getting acquainted with the Pancha Mahabhutas, more you get acquainted to them, you lose your individuality. And more you lose your individuality, the emotions deep within the subconscious of the mind come out, and they either scare you, make you more happy. This varies from person to person. It comes like about, sometimes suddenly, suppose the Tej, the Agni Tattva, if you come to know through meditation, all of a sudden you see a lot of effulgent things or Teja Punja, circular thing in front of your eyes, even when you open the eyes. That is why Ramakrishna Paramahamsa asked a question to Vivekananda in his second visit. Do you see some lighted things in front of you when you sleep? And Vivekananda said, I see it from childhood. What is so great about it? And Ramakrishna said, you don't know what is great about it. You are already having samadhi. Then the smell, all of a sudden, extremely pleasing, beautiful, aromatic sensations start coming. So these all happen during the process, each of them, because Prithvi is Gandhavati. The Prithvi Tattva starts giving the smell. The Agni Tattva starts giving that particular light or the aura that you see. So all these things happen. Now, how much will happen to whom? In what stage it will come? It varies from person to person. Hari.
Sanjay ji, my question was, let me just repeat. My question was, those 5 Pancha Mahabhutas, the ether, the space, does the person, when he's knowing the object, does it so the first is the space, they come to know the space, then they come to know the other Pancha. So I was talking about those.
Yes. I sorry, I understood it now. It always happens the way the Pancha Mahabhuta has manifested. The last to manifest is Prithvi. So it's first to come to know is Prithvi. Now we are going reverse. And the last to know manifest is going to be Akash. Why? Because Panchikarana. Now we are going to see the Panchikaran when we will see this after 24 Tattvas, the Panchikaran will be seen. Panchikaran means the first Tattva is Akash. From Akashat Vayuhu, Vayut Agni, Agnit Jalam, Jalat Apat or Jalat Prithvi Tattva. So when you start experience, it goes in a reverse manner. Prithvi first, then Jala, then Agni, then Vayu, then Teja. That is how it goes. So if you're asking about the gradation, these are the gradations. But they are not like compartmental, that today only I'm getting Prithvi Tattva. It is not like that. It starts manifesting with Prithvi, then it merges into the next Tattva. So these are not very tightly compartmentalized things, although because the manifestation is this manner, in the reverse manner. See, this is what is called as a Layavada, the art of dissolution. Why Sankhyas had been given enormous importance. Gurudeva used to say, in this world there is nothing but Sankhya. Mistake, quiet. In this world, Swamiji used to say, the knowledge real, the entire Bhagavad Gita is mainly Sankhya, according to Gurudeva. Because they are given precisely how the world is created and how you can go back. Samadhi is going back to that one from where it all started. And the grossest of that is Panchamahabhuta, Panchikarana Kruta Panchamahabhuta. And amongst the Panchamahabhutas, the grossest is Prithvi. So when you start back, you start from Prithvi. So the first thing to manifest is beautiful aroma. Then you go further to that. Hari.
Yeah, Purusha Suktam touches part of this. Sanjay ji explained,
Yes.
about this thing. Anyway, your puppy is demanding your time now, I think.
No problem.
Sanjay ji, Hari Om
Ji.
Sanjay ji.
Hari.
Sanjay ji, you said that the only choice which the meditator has is about the object. That means you can take Shaligram, you can take. So does it mean that if you are meditating and you want to be a serious meditator in the long run, you should concentrate only on one object? For example, you are concentrating on, say, Tirupati Balaji's face. It means that you should not concentrate on Shiva or Ganpati. Means I'm just asking this from the.
Understood. It is not that. It is not like that. The problem is, because your mind's ability to concentrate is only possible when one object is in front of, because any other object would mean variation in name and shape. So that means, again, it is like something like starting from a scratch. So if you take one object and if you decide to transcend that object, thereafter you take any object, the object doesn't matter, because next samadhi is going to be objectless. This object is for the first vitarka samadhi only, because once you get an object, you get so much practice, you practice the meditation so much that later on any object is okay for you. Any object means even this object, handkerchief, is fine, because you are not, now you know how to transcend an object. Then the object doesn't matter. Why? Nama Rupa doesn't matter. Till the time Nama Rupa matters, which matters to us now, because we can't take a stone from the street and start meditating. Why? We'll say, because our mind is preoccupied with the concept that, oh, this is a street stone, not a shaligram, because we are at a very gross level. The one who has started seeing street stone as shaligram, then it is a different thing altogether. So in the beginning, to facilitate, I'll give you another analogy to this. Is it necessary that one who goes to the science side and does BSc should not do BA and BCom? He can do that, there is no doubt, nobody stops it. But the fact is, he has focused on science. It is easier to become graduate by taking science forward. And in any case, the objects are going to play a role in the initial period of samadhi. After that, you become adept in putting, it is like on a radio station. Once you know how to play one radio station, then you can play any radio station. But you must learn to have the first one, because half that if you learned, then again if you go to second, then again you might have to start from scratch. So this becomes a graded learning. Instead of that, as it is, time to hai nahi, hardly 10-15 years are left in our life. Of that, again, sadhan chatushta to hua nahi hai. So we can't indulge into the vagaries of choice of meditative object. Best thing is Ishta Devata. Ishta means what? You only wished it. Ishta is what? The one which is wished by you. So if you have wished it, that means you must be liking it. For example, suppose you want to a lady wants to make some food in the kitchen, and she's a young girl, she has never done anything, and the mother wants to teach her. Now what she will say, okay, let us do one thing, let us make malpua. That's the most difficult to make. She will say, no mama, I'm not interested. But suppose the girl herself likes batate vada, and if the mother says that let's start today with bacheli, yes. Why? Inclination. And the inclination came from where? from the past birth. That is why some people like Ganapati so much, they don't look towards Krishna. It doesn't matter. So take that what you like, because your constitution, your swabhava, swadharma is automatically inclined to that particular object. That is how it goes. Hari.
Hari Om. Thank you.
Sanjay ji, just a question. You were talking today about the 4 things about a scripture, right? One is
Yes.
adhikar, vishaya,
Yes.
and the
Sambandha.
3rd and 4th I sort of missed. Can you just repeat that?
Adhikara Vishaya Sambandha Prayojana.
Sambandh and prayojana. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Prayojana is the way, or
Prayojana is, why are you reading it? I mean, is Patanjali Yoga Sutra is a fiction that you are reading just for entertainment? No, that is not prayojana. In fiction, the prayojan is entertainment. In scripture, the prayojan is mumukshata, moksha. So prayojan should be clear. Sambandham has to be clear. What is the sambandham when you read a fiction? There is no sambandham. Some hero is coming, taking heroine and running away. You just want to read the plot and throw it away. Here there is a sambandha because you want to obtain something. This is called prapya prapaka sambandha. I want to obtain from Patanjali Yoga Sutra emancipation for my life. This is sambandha. Hari.